Bird. There it is. It was hiding.
That was my voice that said that.
Okay. Now, can everybody see everything?
Yes.
Yep. Yep. All right. Okay, Lance.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Debbie, for inviting me to talk to the group tonight about the bird subjects that I've been creating in recent years. Believe it or not, I only started painting birds about 2 years ago. And, you know, they just seemed, I don't know if they're picking me or I'm picking them or what, but they're just a fun subject. And if we jump to the second slide there,
Okay.
I wanted to give a special shout out to my source of these, and that would be a cousin of mine out in Montana named Deborah Krantz. And she is an avid photographer of landscapes, birds, animals of all sorts, skies, you name it. She's just got a wonderful talent and a very generous spirit for allowing me to use these subjects. When she posts, all I have to say is, oh yeah, that one. And she knows it's bound to wind up on a canvas. So we have a really good relationship there. But I'm just drawn to them. They have an endearing quality about them. Unique personalities come through. An endless variety of shapes and sizes, colors, poses, settings, you name it. But basically, you know, as we're looking at these, once the photo grabs me, what's going to help me to select one shot from another is going to be a few different things. Limited background detail, some interesting kind of perch, whether branch, stump, trunk, post, etc. And then, of course, you know, the bird character itself. So far, the sizes I've been working on are fairly small, generally 8 by 10, maybe 9 by 12. The biggest one is just 12 by 24. And working smaller for me helps to, you know, focus on the details of it. If it gets much larger, imagine all the feather details that I'm going to have to work on. And so this just helps me to work faster and achieve the level of detail that I really want. As most of you know, I am a fan of the small brush, and I'll hold a piece of paper up with the brushes in front of it so you can see generally they are just small ones. Okay, so yeah, zeros, ones, etc. Maybe I'll use a larger one just to kind of get the background in and blend it. But after that, it's just all these tiny ones. And that's just my thing. I also saved a couple palettes just so you have an idea of what transpires when I'm pulling these together. So yes, this is just a styrofoam meat plate that one would get cleaned out, and you just arrange the colors, light to dark, and then this is where the magic happens. That one is for the Montana bluebird we'll see, and I believe this one would have been probably for the eastern bluebird. So as far as the colors, I tend to keep it in the natural color selection mostly. The burnt umbers, the ochres, rusts, and parchment. Then depending upon the subject, I'll pull in some of the fun colors, the turquoise, reds, oranges, etc. And just kind of get to blending all that. As far as how this all works, the photos I have, I get them and I start to get a sketch down onto a canvas already primed. And that sketch doesn't last very long because I'm just filling in the spots for it. So you get it on there, you lay down the block in the painting, define the various subjects and parts of the painting. If a perch or a tree or trunk is the larger part of the subject in the frame, I'm going to work on that first. It's going to take the most time. The birds, once I get to them, they tend to go the quickest. Might feel like the reverse, but you'll see as we get into these why I have to put more attention to tree bark, etc. Another thing when I'm pulling out the pictures is a lot of them don't have a lot of harsh lighting to them. It's very subtle, subdued, soft lighting, and I think that helps a lot. It helps give them the 3D effect, a little bit of glint of lighting, soft lighting coming in from a left to right or wherever is going to really help to just kind of make it pop for us. But I have not come across one with harsh lighting that has really caught my eye. So without further ado, and I'm not going to stay on camera while we're talking through this because I think that might be a little distracting. Why don't we go ahead and move to the next slide, and we'll start talking about the Bohemian waxwings. Back in 2020, I came across a shot of these 6 birds and just immediately fell in love with the subject material because we had 6 unique personalities. And you can move to the next slide, please. There you go. 6 unique personalities, a muted background, minimal additional subjects. And as I was looking at them, it was almost like a scene out of Disney's Snow White, where the dwarfs are crossing the bridge, each showing their own special little characteristics. So I knew I had to capture this one. And for those that know me, I don't fear a challenge. So why not make my first bird painting one that involves 6 birds, instead of just the one. So the reference shot that I had was a whole lot smaller than the canvas I wanted to work on. So in this case, I actually had to do some math to plot out proportions and such. And you can see the numbers in the bottom photo on the left with some of my calculations there. Now, believe it or not, it doesn't always go as planned. And you can see in the top right 2 pictures and then the bottom right picture, the sizings of the birds seem to go all over the place. But, just take a little bit more time on them, and I was able to tighten up the correct proportions. The background, really soft, muted, limited colors, just kind of smoky haze, so to speak. And that's enough because I don't want the background to be the main focus. I want those birds to be front and center on stage. Now, the tough part is, as you can see in those different shots, I kind of planted the seed where the birds would be sitting on the branch, and then I got them in there, and they don't look at all proportionally correct to what you see on the left side. Too big, too tall, whatever. So I had to shave off a whole lot in a few of those. And the challenge involved with that is now you have to get the blending of the background once again. And that, as we all know, when you're working with acrylics and they dry darker, there are several attempts to get it to blend in to make it exactly like what the rest of it looked like. So there was a lot of layering to just get it right. But eventually I did get them correct. And to help me along, we can jump to the next slide, please. I did an enlargement of each of the birds. So it's a little bit easier for me to see because I do wear a couple pairs of glasses just to see the detail. And I will usually have a photo reference on my computer. That way I can get the exact colors that that the photo started off with. A printout doesn't always give you the exact colors. So I have these separate bird shots enlarged to about 5 or 6 inches tall surrounding me so that it's a quick and easy reference. And then I just work back and forth looking at them and the screen and the canvas, and I get everything tightened up. So if we jump to the next slide here, you can see I'm starting to work the birds from right to left. There was no reason for doing that, except I thought, that bird on the far right side has the least amount of detail for me to play around with. So let's start off with the easiest ones and work our way to the left. Also, I focus on one bird at a time as I'm moving across. And that's just to keep me from becoming overwhelmed with all the details. And you can see your progress, you can feel the progress, and just helps things move along easily. As we can see, I think we see enough on these 4 slides. We can jump to the next slide here. Just giving you some close-up of the details of each of the birds there. You can see how I've got the colors matched up nicely. That subtle lighting I was talking about before is coming in gently from the left-hand side to each of them. And the personalities are really starting to come out, or have come out at this point. So at this stage, I'm just kind of touching them up a little bit. And the branch that they're all hugging closely, this would have been the next item that I'd be working on. And this branch is very easy. I mean, if you painted a stick before, it's just dark lights, and then trying to get some texture in there. So that was probably one of the easiest parts of this painting. But when you're painting, again, dark on that light background, you got to make the commitment and just go forward and don't be afraid. And those trailing branches that you throw in, again, you're just stepping out off the ledge. Just do it. And as other nature artists have said, there's no perfection out there. It's just make it like nature would. Mistakes and all. So I think if we jump to the next one, there we go. So adding a little bit more touch up to that background, the dark background on the left. And I think I did add a trunk to the far left side in the final stages. It's just a matter of just tightening things up a little bit. And so we wind up at the final product. The blending of the colors on these things, again, it's just layer after layer and a lot of finger rubbing to blend it in. I don't know, you just have to get in there and do it. But anyway, that's pretty much it. Subtle, subdued colors on the feathers. I was really going for kind of like a suede or a silky feel. And I think I did achieve that with them. Again, first birds ever. So
I love the way their feet grab the branch, that connection between their where they are on there. You really can kind of get a sense of the 3 dimensions of it. That's really, really nicely done. Is one of these the photo? Or are these?
No. Both. One of these is almost finished, and the bottom one is the finished shot.
Okay. Wow.
It's just kind of the lighting, I think, when I took the final shot of it. But your point about the claws is good, because that helped break up the branch details. Otherwise, they would just look really flat. But as you can see, each of them they break it up. They have those talons. Some are popping up underneath the branch. So it gives you that feeling like they are totally
Yeah.
curled around it. Some are curled from the backside. But yeah, it's a small detail, but if you don't ground it onto something, they'll just look like they're floating, and then it doesn't look real.
I'm just
Also-
amazed that you didn't grid that out, that you actually freehanded that.
Yeah.
That's absolutely amazing to me.
It is. And you just, when you say freehand, did you do it with paint? Did you block it in just with paint, or did you start with pencil?
You get pencil on there, and then it's paint.
Okay.
Because you lose the pencil as soon as you start blocking it all in.
Right.
I don't use any sort of masking items at all. I just get it in there and
Do you
go
stick,
to it.
do you stick to one brand of acrylic paint, Lance?
No, I stick to what's on sale brand.
Well,
And,
the reason I'm asking is we had a demo going back a number of years with a Windsor Newton rep. And he claimed that their acrylic paint does not do a color shift. But I am like
okay.
you, and I mix and match whatever's on sale. So I've never taken an opportunity to only paint something with their brand. I was just curious
Mhm.
and see if you had ever tried that.
I haven't, and since I mixed different ones,
So you're the same as me. You don't know.
I don't know. No. What I know is that when it goes on there, and if it dries, and it, like, I'm trying to remember where I had some issues. There was a correction that I made below the center of the birds on the branch, and it was more yellow than the background. So I spent hours just trying to get the blend right and pull the hair dryer out and dry it and see if it worked, and just back and forth until it was subtle enough that no one would notice it but me. And now you all know there's a subtle imperfection in it, but it's hard
That has to
notice.
be so hard to mix those blended areas and match them as they transition.
It is, but that's the challenge.
Wow.
That's the challenge.
Right,
Listening to you is even more impressive now, knowing what you actually did.
Well, I appreciate that, and now you'll know. Now you'll know going forward.
Wow.
So, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say also that blending and lining it up right to the edge of the birds of each, that little line between bird and sky or background, and keeping that consistent that's so impressive, because it's so hard to get the line exactly where you want and then keep the background in a color that's matching the rest of it. Amazing.
It's like a tailor. You're going to trim and sew and trim and sew until you get it right. But it's really not as difficult as you may think. It's just the way I do it, and you have to get it exactly right. And I don't know, it just happens on every one of the shots that I do. The bird will initially start off a little wobbly, we'll say, wobbly in the exactness of what I'm going for, but you just tighten it up, put a little more of the background around it, and the closer you are to that bird, you're not going to see as much of that blend correction right by the birds as you would further out. It'll kind of like pull your eye away, but when it's right up next to it, the strength of the detail of the bird will supersede that little correction right beside it.
Right. Understood.
If that makes sense.
Oh, totally makes sense. Yeah. And also I was thinking too, that the sky, a cloudy, heavily laden cloudy sky is like that as well. It's usually like one flat kind of color. It is usually a sort of subtle variations.
Yep. And that from my landscape paintings and the oil paintings that I used to do, learning how skies aren't just blue. Skies have browns and umbers and ochres in them. And that's that kind of smoky haze is what really, makes this, pulls the softness together and pushes them forward, because there's nothing in the background really to look at. I don't even want that tree in the background to have attention. I want it just to kind of be like a support.
Really, it's just really wonderful.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so enough of the waxwings. We can jump over to this. All right, the red-breasted nuthatch, and this one's on an alder tree. So I came across this this image, and what attracted me to this was the bird and the hole in the tree. I had not initially considered the challenge that the bark in this photo might present. Or maybe I chose to ignore it, who knows? But I just saw it and said, that's one I'm going to do down the road. And so once again, I plot things out, sketch it out on the canvas, begin blocking in the background, bark and the bird. You can see the initial photo, the reference photo on the top left, and one of the first blockings is over on the right side. So the muted background. I don't think I want to ever paint another alder tree as long as I live. They are so wickedly challenging, but all those little slits, I may not have everyone exactly right, but I did my best to try to place them as close as possible to what the photo was showing. And they're just they drove me over the edge with just frustration.
What's interesting though is that I feel like that with the bark is in this particular photo an image is very pertinent to the bird. Like the bird itself, if it were on a branch like the previous painting, it wouldn't have the same striking impact. I feel like this specific tree, it adds to the context of the bird.
You're right. This bird is not that exciting looking. It's cute. It's got some unique details in its feather patterns, but it doesn't really jump off the page and say, look at me. But the tree itself and all the action that's going on with it, that's where your eyes are going to be drawn more so. But anyway, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say too, that you can see the work that bird has put. I understand what you mean about being attracted to the hole in the tree, because you can see where the bird has worked the bark away to make a nest in it.
Yes.
I mean, there's actually like a lot of subtle information in this painting.
Yeah. This bird spent a lot of time getting everything ready for it to nest in there, and left us with a lot of great character at their front door. So that section in itself, I was thinking, how am I going to get this to be 3D looking? Because I really want those curls to pop out. And it took a lot of hours. Believe it or not, the bird was the easiest thing to do in this painting, period. Everything else was a real bear. There is a little bit more lighting. We talked about that in the beginning, but there's a little more lighting coming in from the left side, not as subtle as the previous one, but that really helped when I'm focusing in on those bark curls. And at that point, I'm pulling in the reds and the oranges and the yellows and not white so much, but a parchment color. Trying to think what else I put into that section there. The browns, the umbers, and some blacks. But there was such a subtle grading in each of those as you wind and curl and flip up and go out beyond the tree itself. That section just took hours and hours and hours and hours just to get the peelings the way I wanted to be. And I think that really helped make the bird pop out. I know I was showing the family that the hole there, and they were kind of confused because it wasn't registering. Like, what is that on the bird's head? I had to start working more and more with it to make it look like it had some depth going into the tree too. But as you're working on it, you can't just spend a whole day on just that pulled back bark. There was a lot of, I'll say, dancing up and down that tree, working on the outside of those, the split bark, the subtle grades and shading, the grays, the ochres you put in there, some more of the rust color, the lighter tones down at the bottom, and then that dark left side. This tree obviously was at the edge of a forest because there will be some green that pops up in that edge on the left-hand side. But if we move on to the next slide, please. There we go. So you can see I've got the left side in there, tightening things up more. The bird has gotten a little more of those above highlights blended onto its back. And they all seem to have like a dirty chin. That's one thing I notice when I'm doing birds. They might have a white under throat area, but they all seem to have a little gray tone that makes it look a little more natural. I have to remember to work the side lighting in at that edge of the bird, whereas in the previous paintings we had the sky, and so I had to get that sharp edge. Well, this one you have the bark as the sharp edge, and the bird's neck is, it's almost like it's reversing. Easy enough to correct in and around those areas with a bird's neck, because you could lump him up a little bit more. But as simple as it sounds, I'm just going up and down, just looking to see where do I still need to work a little more color, and I needed to lighten the left side a little bit more. I also started to haze out the left lower side because it was mossier, and I was also getting really tired of painting bark by that point. And I thought, oh, maybe I can just finish it up really easily. But, once we commit to something, if I'm going to do detail from top to bottom, I'm just going to do that.
Lance, can I ask a quick question about your
Yeah.
layering technique?
Yeah.
You say you just keep building up layers, building up. So when you do that, what is the density of the paint? Are you dry brushing things on? Do you thin it with water so that it's more like a glaze, or how do you do the layers?
I do use water to thin out my paints. When I blend it on the palette, I always have a drip or two in there just to keep it so it can flow. But when I start out, it's going to be a lot thicker, not thick like, you're layering it on like paste or anything. It's thin from the start. And when I get to the final touches, if there's some really subtle blendings, it's going to be almost like milk, that thinned out. And I may end up putting one or two of those thin layers on and just dry, hair dryer in between to get that subtle blending. I bet you I paint my paintings 6 or 7 times in total, going over them with each layer. But that's what helps to make it look like each of those slits in the bark has a ridge to it and has a depth into it. Or the moss down at the bottom, it kind of comes up away from the bark and then, goes around the backside of the tree. It's just a lot of, shadows and shading and being really subtle with it. I don't want anything that's going to be super harsh unless there's an edge that needs to be, like on those little the bark peels. But if we're able to blow that up anymore, you can see how each one is just blended from that. Yeah, if you'd almost have to blow up the entire screen here to see the detail that is in one of these. So if you want to stop presenting it and then blow it up, you might be able to do that. Oops. There you go. So that's the reference photo. And that would have been my second stage. But you can see just in the peel of the bark, the different, how close each of those colors is. And there at that stage, it's kind of like the paint by numbers where you can see the defined colors and such.
That is interesting, that shift between the detail like that, blowing it up like that.
Yep.
But this is truly an amazing, the color that you have nailed on this little bird against the bark is truly spectacular. I love the shade of this little bird and those little details there on it, on the cheek of the modulation of the feathers. It's truly, extraordinary there what you do.
Thank you.
Hey, Lance.
Hey, what?
I have a question.
All right.
Talk a little bit about some of the decision making you do throughout painting this, because obviously the photograph is beautiful to begin with. But as it is a piece of art and you're like, is your goal, hey, I want to match that photograph, or do you make some decisions along the way like, nah, I'd like to warm this up over here, or
That's a great question. Generally, when I find a photo that I really am attracted to, I'll try and make it look just like the photo was, because I felt I'm trying to match perfection. Now, there are times where the color will be just slightly off. Maybe it's a little warmer, maybe it's a little brighter. But generally, they're going to be pretty close to each other. And that's why I threw those reference shots in there so everybody could see, just trying to get as close to it as possible.
so that's like your roadmap. It's already been.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I don't like I don't want to involve an imagination in something where it's already plotted out for me. I just want to recapture it and recreate it with a brush.
Yeah, and some of that work and decision making is done, before you pick up your paintbrush then.
Oh yeah. When I do these, I cannot sit and just do one of these start to finish. They will take hours and hours.
Yep.
And they'll sit on the easel and I'll stare at it from across the room, just looking at it, studying it, saying, I need a little more light here. I need to work on that. I need to just get up there and work on that section, or pop this color up a little higher on the head of the bird or something. It just speaks to you as you're going through it, like everybody else does.
Lance, I have to say that when I look at the reference for this,
Yeah.
and then look at your final painting, I think you really did improve on it and enhance it, because there's an illumination,
Yeah.
the final piece that you don't, that isn't in that original reference.
Okay.
So I mean, I just think it's beautiful what you did, and the lighting and everything. I think you really improved on it.
Well, great.
Do you happen to have an image of the reference photo and the finished one side by side?
I don't think we do.
No, probably not there, but on the first slide.
Yeah, so there's the reference photo.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, definitely. I see what you mean, Debbie, about the glow.
Yeah, the
Mhm.
bird just really pops on his finished
Yes.
part of it, you know, when if I go back to that one. And so I just think you really captured it well. And
I like the painting more than the photo, actually.
Well, thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
So that's probably why, to answer Lynn's question, I don't want to stray from things. I add my own, but it's going to be pretty much a reference to what I was looking at. And that's the same thing I do when I do the architectural paintings, or a lot of my other things too. I don't think I was blessed with the imagination aspect of just kind of creating something, as well as, recreating what I'm looking at. So, and for me, it moves a little faster when I'm recreating, I think, than if I'm just trying to imagine it all, because it's right there and I can say that's correct or that's not correct. So anyway.
would you like to go on to the next?
Oh, sure. We can move on to the red shafted flicker. This also was one that I found, a while back, and thought, oh, this will be pretty easy to do. Looks pretty simple to capture. A lot of grays and browns. It has a nice cream colored belly, a muted color palette, a limited perch detail, and it was a straight on side view. So how tough could that be? However, once again, the bark fooled me. And as we get that all pulled up, after blocking in the trunk and the bird, I was realizing, okay, this is going to take a little longer than I thought. So you can see down in the bottom left, that was like first sitting or first two sittings where things are blocked in, and I'm working diligently on the bark. It was like trying to paint a canyon with all the different ridges and the lights and the darks, and there was moss on it, and the reference photo I had didn't capture everything I wanted, and the PC image I had from afar was hard to see all the details. So I just kept playing tug of war with myself with color blending and details going up and down and up and down and up and down that tree. But eventually I got to a point where I could just say, all right, let's just step away from it for a while and get working on the bird. And again, you can see the first attempts at it. It's very flat. It's almost folk art looking on that first attempt. But put a little more time, if we look in the top right corner, put a little more time on it and you start layering in the different colors, the wings and the belly and the head and everything, it starts to come alive and become more 3D. The roundness of the cheeks and the soft, roundness of the head and and the beak and everything like that, and that tail that almost looks like it's its tripod that it's sitting back on. Just going up and down, getting some different colorations in there, and the blending, and the those tiger stripes you see on the back. In the picture, it may look like you don't see it very much. But on my computer reference shot, they stood out quite a bit. And there were so many highlights in between those different layers, and none of them were a straight line. So you're just up and down into the crevices to make it look like you have folded feathers. So anyhow, the bottom reference shot there, I think you can see a little bit more of how the blending of the grays, it's catching the light from above. So you're going from a dull muddy gray to almost a slate gray, or a Civil War gray, Union Confederate gray, coming out in the throat, and then pulling that up underneath the eye. And oh, I want to point out on the eyes, you can see, you put in that big old black dot to start off with, just for reference. But it seems that as soon as you can get a dot, not in the center, it's generally like just a hair above the center to the left a little bit, it's going to make that eye look so real, like it's gazing back at you. Depending upon where you put that dot, it's going to make or break that look. I don't know. I think if I moved it over to the right, it just would look kind of strange. So dot placement on the eye is a subtle but very important item to point out. The belly of that bird in these images, it wasn't as apparent, but it's a soft pink, and you have to blend the pinks and the browns together to just kind of get that grade going from just at the edge of the wing underneath it, and then it changes to a lighter color and then comes back in the pink as we get to the other side of the belly. Again, why do I pick birds with all those dots and lines and details on it? You don't think about that when you first fall in love with the image, but then you speak 6 different languages as you're in there trying to do every single little dot. And then the dots aren't the same color either. They're not dark. They're not all black. They're blacks, they're browns, there's some light grays. They kind of fade off into the distance in that upper part of its chest. And you just say, why did I choose this? Why can't I just get an easier one? But that's the fun of it. You've got all those unique little bits of jewelry on the bird that you want to make stand out. Also, just want to point out, look how muted the background was. That there's that subtle blues and a little burgundy in there. Who knows what was behind the bird in the actual picture? Must have been trees, or maybe it was a house or something. But having it so subtle and muted pushes that bird right up in your face. What I liked about this bird also was the 2 bits of red color. That was a fun part of adding in there, because you don't see that bright, brilliant red except up on his cheek, and then there's that racing stripe on his on the black wing drooping down towards the bottom. And I wanted that fire engine red, to really shine out there, even though it's just that little strip. That's going to add some nice character to it. So I think we can jump to the next slide, please. Thank you. All right, so here you can see the final touches, feathers, bark, etc. The claws again gripping the, or the talons gripping the bark with the light shining down on them. It just, the softness of the feathers again came out with the blending. And you know, you're working with small brushes, and then they get smaller and smaller, and then you're just, I don't know, there's just slight hits here and there to make it look like it's catching a little bit of light, because we know feathers can be reflective. They have that silky reflectivity to it at some points. Some more than others, like ravens in the sun would be really silky looking, but these don't have that much, but you want to put a little bit in. Even pulling in some of that gray and the browns over to the top of the beak. It's a dark beak, but it's not dark all the way up to the top, because it is reflective of the sky, light coming down on it. Let's see what else it was. I think that was pretty much it. Just working on the feathers, getting them finished up with the details of the highlights. I think, what was the other thing I was going to say? Just the breaking up of the lighting, as you can see right to the top left side of the bird. You can see there's that middle point of light that kind of hits at a fold and then shifts down a little bit with those stripes. You then see that repeat further down on its wing, just at the edge where it's folding over. And then again, you can see it as it's moving up into the breast of the bird, as well as further down on the wings. Those bits where you break it up, it lets your eyes dance around a little bit more, and I don't know, I think it just adds a little more realistic effect to it. But this one had really sharp breaks in the color, from the gray to the whites and the browns and that dark crest on its chest there. That was, it's the way it looked, and you know, I didn't have to blend those in as much, but no, it just helped make it all pop.
Gorgeous.
So,
It's gorgeous.
The color, the feathers, the patterns on the feathers of that bird, it kind of makes me think of like it's the leopard tiger bird, you know,
Yeah.
because it
yeah,
cuts leopard
That's-
and then stripes like a tiger. It's quite interesting.
you're right, Kelly, and it did have a tiger effect to it, and that's what I was saying, where it's not just a straight line across. You got the valleys, whereas the bird's wings are folding in and underneath itself. You have to take that into account. So the line doesn't go straight across. It dips down into the valley, and maybe it pops up just a hair above where it was, and then it'll do the same thing again, and wind up showing up on the next row just a little different.
And I noticed too that the actual line of the breast of the bird, where it meets the sky behind it, like underneath the beak and on the where that black
Yes.
part of the chest is, that's also not completely smooth. That also reflects the texture of the feathers. You know, feathers on a bird aren't, so I mean, sometimes they are very smooth, but sometimes they're soft and fluffy. So
Right.
they wouldn't have a really sharp, hard edge. They would have a
Right.
kind of modulated edge.
Right. It's good to allow a little bit of that imperfection to make it look real. And you're going to see that in some of the next shots that we look at. But yeah, this was a fun one. It gave me a challenge. I thought I'd be done with it pretty quickly. But I do want to point out the number of progress shots that I took on this were quite limited. So that's showing this is what, my third or fourth one. And I think I'm getting better and better, quicker at them. And so I take, less pictures to record them. They just seem to happen a little bit quicker. So you can do it too.
What is quicker, Lance? Like how long does this one take?
Oh, these all probably, well, this one probably was a good 20, 25 hours at least. It wasn't a commission work, so I wasn't keeping accurate time records for it. But it progressed pretty quickly, and I think most of the time I spent was the bark. So, all right, now this is my little baby mountain or Montana bluebird, and I can tell you, it's technically called a mountain bluebird, but the photo was taken in Montana, and so that's why I'm calling him a Montana bluebird. But earlier this year, I decided I want to do a couple of bluebird paintings as I knew they would be popular. And I did find this chubby little guy that was perched on a nice weathered fence post, and he's snacking on a mayfly. So everything about this one, I really enjoyed the colors, the detail in the wood, the simplistic background. And so anyway, started off, you can see the blocking in, and it may look like an oil painting being blocked in, just the way it's layered at that point. I get the strong layerings of color laid down. In this case, because the bird and the wood are almost equal in subject size, I'm going to be working back and forth and back and forth and back and forth with them. The lighting on this was a lot more defined, so I knew I was going to impart more dark tones as well as the light zones. And the acrylics, they kept drying darker than I wanted, so there's going to be a lot more layering on this one than probably some of the other ones they had before. But as you can see, that the first blocking in, move on to the second one. Already, I just wanted to get that eye dot in there. I wanted him to be looking right at me from the beginning of the painting, so he was like my little buddy along the journey. And I was anxious to get his beak in there just to make sure everything, looked good from top to bottom. But he had just such a wonderful electric blue color in the photo. And how was I going to get all of those little details of feathers? He's just rippling and ruffling on that belly. It just is going to take time. I had to tell myself that. So you can see on that second one, I threw in some really harsh dark tones on the left side that's in shadow and under his tail and under his belly, and the post itself was in shadow big time on that left side with that massive crack down the middle. The detail of the wood with all the little chop marks weathered over the years. I could have made it real simple and just focused on the bird, but I thought, we're this close. We're going to see what this post looks like. Moving on to the third right side shot, you can see the change in the layers right underneath his neck and at his belly, how you've gone from those really harsh laden colors to just the different strokes are thinner and thinner and thinner, thinner in width, I mean. They're lightening things up. And I actually went a little too light in that regard. I lost some of that brilliant turquoise on the belly, on the chest. And his belly and the section where his legs were, that gave me a run for my money too, because you want it defined like the photo, but it's a soft definition. So you put in the dark and then you cover it up no, that's too light. And you go back, no, that's too dark. And so back and forth, you just keep fighting yourself until you find that perfect blend. And the light color there, this is one of the only bird ones I've done that has actual white. And I hesitate to use it like a lot of artists do because it's blinding. But in this case, I needed something really bright for that belly to match what I was working on. I did use parchment, I did use grays, I did blend in some of the rose color, like I said, I've done in other things to give that punch, but it was just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I had to get that worm or the mayfly in there just to give scale to make sure we had things moving nicely.
Also, I noticed that the lighting source in this is really quite complicated because it's coming kind of
Right.
not directly at the bird, like
No.
slightly over to the right. So it creates that dark, I guess it's the right side of the bird, our left
Yep.
side, that dark part in shadow.
Yep.
That quite complicated, that lighting.
Yep.
Because you had to explain it with the post too, with the fence post where the shadow is.
Yeah.
So that lighting has to match.
Right. It didn't feel like it was front and center. It was definitely off to the right side, but almost like it's an 11 o'clock. It's not quite high noon because you can see the light on the top of the head is just off to the right side. But it's strong enough that it's coming in from that angle,
Yeah.
whatever degrees that would be. So that's a good observation. And between the middle and the third example here, you can see, just how I was trying to get the highlight on the head, and then I'm stroking back and forth with the blues to get into it, and then I eliminate too much of it, and some of it will be coming back, and it'll turn a bluer color. But going up and down the back of that bird to get the right value of highlight, and then the balance down by his left leg, right side in the picture. It was just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So let's move on to the next slide, please, and we can see, there we go. Here you're really seeing how it's softening up. The belly itself, I finally worked out the shadows, the grays, with just enough in there to make it look like, there is a little crevice there by that first leg, and then more on the back side. I've also been able to get in there and get that turquoise that we saw in the original, just blended back into his upper chest. And the other thing I was going to point out is, I think, Kelly, you were saying, as far as the feather, the fluffiness of it, his belly was definitely fluffy. And,
yes, it looks fluffy.
And this is where the hard edge is tossed right out the window. I have a hard edge with each stroke against that shadow, but you can see how the shadow itself has some blending in there too, so that it's not too harsh. And then they just kind of hang, they float off his belly, and that gives you that soft, unkempt type of look that a bird like this would have. Is it's ruffled things up, and it's all loose and free flowing. Let's see what else we have here. I did more refinement on the post. You can see how that's graduating from the left side to the right, how I'm struggling with the lights and how much ridges and valleys and things am I going to have, and where is the light really hitting heavy on it. And as I mentioned before, it'll be 6 or 7 layers of paints just to get the effect that I'm happy with. But you can see how that progresses from half done to all dark, and then you see the lights coming back in, swooping back over, and kind of hitting the paths on the dark side of the post. Yeah, so that took a while too to do, but it was fun. The dark underside of his tail, that was a necessary bit to really pop out the lighter details, I thought. It subtly lightens up as you get to the edge. You know, you don't have just that harsh dark edge you do on the top feather, but the bottom one is letting some of that light come through as it's hitting the fence post as well. And those darn highlights on his back head and under his eye, I think there you can see the strokes coming out. Even in the finished work there, it's probably a little more evident. You can see just the dots and dashes and dits and dabs all over that are going to blend together when you step back 4 or 5 feet from it. And it looks like the little feathers. You can see the turquoise in the top of his head blending out to the bright white or light highlight in the back. And again, right at his forehead, you can see the little, it's not a sharp edge. You can see just those little feathers just sticking up just a wee bit to give that same feathery effect. And again, he's got a dirty chin. So you have to throw in those little gray things. They don't wear bibs, I guess, when they're eating. And so they get that dirty little chest area. But this was a fun one. And, you know, it just, every time I looked at it, it made me smile. And I think it did for others as well. And so I enjoyed working on him.
And this one sold, is that correct?
This one sold, yes.
So are you going to do prints of this or anything so that you can keep it around?
I made note cards of them, and I can certainly make prints too. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. It's such a great piece.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about the conditions of that sale? Was that something someone just happened to see, or you did it with someone in mind?
I did not paint this with anybody in mind. It was actually a family member that had reached out and were very interested in it. And I was very obliging. I enjoy when people want to have my works, and if they want to buy them, great. I like keeping some of them, but heck, you know, some people will love them more. And you know when it's touched someone's heart and they really would like having it in their house, then it's probably meant to be there. So yeah, it was just a simple, they saw it. They told me if I'm interested in selling it, they're interested in buying it. And we work out the details. And they were hesitant after they saw that I got the award on it at the show. But you know, I have the award. They didn't get the award. They got the painting, and you know, I can always stick that award on a print and keep it here.
It must be really hard though to let it go.
Well, they are. Some of them are harder than others, but I think I had said, or somebody told me that, you know, it can be appreciated by so many other people if it's not just tucked away in your house. And, you know, it'll be fine there, and it'll pass on to, you know, the family members in time. So it'll outlive me. and at least I know it's in a home where it's loved. So I look at it as a positive thing.
I think
All right.
artwork
Okay.
is meant, I was just gonna say, I think artwork is meant to be, you know, in the public, like to go
Mhm.
out of the studio and into
Right.
the world.
Yep.
I think that that is the, but I did wonder that about the wax wings, the Bohemian waxwing paintings. If you
Mhm.
kept one or if you sold it, or if you were gonna keep it.
I still have that. It's a very popular one, so we'll see. We'll see. All right, who wants to see the next one? Me.
Bring it on.
Bring
We're
it
ready.
on. All right. So now we're going to go to the other side of the family, the eastern bluebird. Again, with this one, I did have somebody in mind that I wanted to do this for, but that's going to be down the road. I wanted to just make sure I had both types of bluebirds done. This is probably the more well-known varieties of bluebirds around these parts. And when I looked at the reference photos, I really loved the birdhouse that it was perched on. And once again, I loved it so much, but I didn't think the realistic side of it of, oh my gosh, it's a challenging birdhouse. Look at all the details and the shadows and the and whatnot. But oh well, moving forward. Basic blocking in of the details on the first steps after I sketched it in. The background, nice easy blending of greens, lights, light greens, dark greens, all muted, all subtle to push the rest of the subject forward. And actually the house moved forward quite easily and quickly. I surprised myself with it, but it just it has such a beautiful weathered tone to it. Again, it's a lot of dits and dashes and just back and forth with those tiny brushes, and those layers will give you the wood grain effect going across. You had to make sure they're going across for the roof and up and down for the siding, and a little curved on the underside where that hole would be. We even had some mossy tones growing on the underside of it, so we know it was out in the weather for a long time. But you know, mostly the parchment colors and the ochres and the browns and all that were used just to get everything blended in. You can tell again it's a warmer tone than the reference photo. So what we were talking about before of changing things, it just depends on what colors I'm picking. And I like the warmer tones for the wood. In this case here, they worked well. They complemented against the green. And so I just kept moving forward and keeping them in that kind of tone. So the bird gets blocked in a little bit, but he's just hanging over it. Once I felt the birdhouse was moving along nicely, so let's get some detail on the bluebird here. We all know blues and orange are complementary. I didn't realize as a 5-year-old, I knew that blues and oranges were complementary because, fun fact, I asked for a birthday cake that was orange cake blue icing or blue cake orange icing, and I got it. But little did I realize, you know, I was learning my palette at that age. So I just got the basic colors on him and make sure the feathers are defined, and you know he's still floating up there. But you keep adding layers to him, and you know you can see on the reference he almost has a purple color to him on that large back wing there on the top of his head. I didn't necessarily want to go that far with it, but there's so many different blues we can put into this one and any birds. I wanted to keep it kind of subtle. So if we move on to the next slide here. There we go. So I think between these, the left side shots, we're really starting to get more refinement on that bird itself. The house, I would go back and forth a little bit when I got tired of the bird work, just to get more knots in the wood, more dits and dashes, and play around with that weathered look and the crevices and the underside of it. And you know, that just keeps me from being bored with one section all the time. But you can see where the highlights are starting to come in, top of the head of the bird. Not very strong, but just enough to accentuate that forehead, the beak, the belly itself goes from that bright cream color to a muted gray with the orange blending down underneath it, and bringing out that shadow that he's going to be casting right below him. All those are going to help, you know, make it stick as you keep moving forward. But it's just a lot of refinement, a lot of just look at it, step back, you know, focus on just one little section of the wood, one plank of the wood, one crack, and make sure that it's dark enough, or it's light enough, or it's not so straight, because then it's going to feel too fake. Just the rounded parts of the edge of that wood, those are a challenge, because you can see there's a difference. The top board has more of a roundness. The bottom seems a little more straight edged. And if I'd done it all straight edge, it just wouldn't look right, I don't think, because you have that dark side that really kind of like stops. It stops your eye, and then you dance down to the bottom and dance over to the right. With the top right photo, I think we're getting into the final stages here. Again, very subtle corrections with the highlighting. The back dark black part of the wing, this is where now I'm getting some of the grays blended in, and that long blue tail. I've lost count how many times I was going back and forth to try and get just the right amount of highlight in there to make it pop and tie into the color on the right next to the belly, so to speak, of that other wing, you know, with the black tip, to try to have that, you know, match as it goes through, but you have the break in between. The feet also, I think, yeah, I added the feet at this point, clutching right to the edge there. You can almost feel the little talon going into the wood. He's not going anywhere. And lightening up that beak, he's got some reflectivity there. Much lighter right underneath the eye itself. It's just so many visits to that little section, each little section, just to add a highlight here or there, to bring it out just enough so that it looks like it's getting the light from above. And then we just look down at the bottom. You see the reference photo next to the main photo. I think it's warmer. It's not the exact same color as the bird in the picture, but the tones, I think, all tie together well with that blue that I did choose. And trying to think what else did I do in there. It's there isn't a single color in there that is just plain old, brown or blue or whatever. Everything is a blend of something else in order to get all these effects. So I don't remember if I had one more photo of this or if that would be the last one of. There we go. There we go. Oh, we did further refinements. Good. Okay. You see how the back is starting to pop a little bit more.
Yeah, there's something there where the head and the beak really come
Yep.
off of the
Yep.
painting.
Yep. And there's
Very
more.
impressive.
Thank you. And there's more darkness under the belly. Those little, gray hints under his eye. A little more attention to that darker orange right underneath the shoulder area versus the orange underneath his neck. He almost looks like he has some wrinkle under his eye, but that just helps make that eye pop a little bit more, where you have the bottom highlight, you have the top highlight that just slightly connects down at the bottom, but there's that blue break at the top. The little glint of white right at the edge of his shoulder itself. And on the back, can you see can you see the feathers are separating as you go further down? You have little edges, subtle, but just enough there that tells you there's a break, there's a break, there's a break, or there's a layer, another layer. Yeah. And another thing I want to point out is when I'm signing my works, I want to incorporate colors that I've used in this painting to make it subtle. I don't want my name to just, jump off the page, so I won't do it in red or anything like that. Not to say that's wrong, but this is the way I do it. I want it to blend in, and so I think in this one I use some oranges and numbers and others, just to get it in there, hide it at the bottom.
I noticed you have a copyright in there, a copyright sign.
I do, yeah. I always do that right in the center. I always do that because it's mine, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, good point. I'm just, always good to pick these things up from people. So
Whether
it's very
that
wise.
does stop anybody down the road, I don't know, but it makes me sleep better at night having that in there.
Do
Yeah.
you do that for commissioned works too, or
Yeah,
just for
yeah.
your public? All of them. Okay.
All of them. I forget where I learned that years ago, but I figured, all right, well, might as well just do it myself, and it's not going to hurt anything. It's just one more little symbol, right?
Yeah, good point. Yes.
So, but other than that, that's the finished work on the right-hand side. And the finished works, I like the way they look when they're all done, but when I get to give them a nice spray of the varnish, the details in these pop even more. So it's a satin color that I use, so it's not shiny, but it just has a little bit of a sheen, and that's just enough to make these things become a little more 3D feeling looking.
And is the varnish, you use a spray varnish? Is that a varnish that I could use on oil painting, or is that just for acrylics?
I'd have to look on the spray bottle. I think it's a Krylon archival type of spray.
Okay, I'll make a note.
Yeah, you can get them at Amazon, or I don't want to do too many plugs there. I've purchased matte varnishes and the semi-gloss, and the semi was just way too shiny, but satin seems to be just the right amount of sheen. So I think that was it. Again, I want to thank you all for joining tonight and listen to me yammer on about my works. And again, thanking my cousin Debbie for sharing her wonderful photos for me to work with. And I appreciate y'all listening to me and enjoying the works and being fans at the shows. And that's it. I'm bowing right now, but you can't see me.
Thank you. It was very interesting. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you very much, Callie. Appreciate you.
Definitely. Thank you so much for putting all that together, Lance. I know that's a lot of work just even getting the presentation going.
Very good, very good.
It was fun. It was fun.
I like when you especially talk about your challenges and how you say, I should never do this bird again. I'll never do this house again. I'll never do bricks. I'll never do trees.
Yeah, I know, but I don't listen to what I say sometimes, so I just keep falling into that same trap. No, that's all right.
Nice job.
Thank you very much, Helena.
You are a patient man.
Yes,
Thank you.
are. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now.